Today's going to be another sunny day, and you know what that means? Infrared photography. Today is a tutorial. Roll the intro. So behind me, this brightly lit scene is the Brighton Royal Pavilion. It's 3 hours after sunrise and the sun is way up in the sky, very, very harsh, very few clouds in the sky, which is terrible for normal photography, but perfect for infrared. Let's go and set up. So I'll tell you why I've come to this specific location. When I'm shooting infrared, so ideally I want a handful of elements in my photograph. First of all, I want a building, I want a subject that looks good. Castles look really good in infrared. Second thing I need some trees or some grass so that you get the glowing white, so you can actually see that it's an infrared photograph. Thirdly, if you can throw this in, water. Water goes very, very black in infrared photographs. It looks great. And then to top it off, a blue sky. You can't see it here. A blue sky that will become dark in the background, so you get a dark foreground, bright midground, your subject, and then a very dark sky. Looks amazing. Let's get on with it. Okay, now infrared photography works in a similar sort of way to visible light. At the moment, there is no direct sunlight on this pond in front of me, so it's going to look darker than the rest of the image, which has got sunlight on it. But I'm going to take the shot anyway. Maybe this will be the image that I'll process. So today I'm shooting on my infrared converted Canon 550D. It seems to be what a lot of people do. They've got an old camera sitting around. Should I sell it? I decided to convert it. This is a 720 nanometer conversion and there's no going back now. This is converted to infrared. It only takes infrared photographs. I've got a few lenses which work well with infrared, but today I'm shooting with the Canon 10 to 18 millimeter STM. You don't need any fast lenses because it's always bright when you're shooting infrared. I shoot a lot of landscapes. I was up at sunrise this morning, and after the good light is gone, most people pack up and go home. But if you've got an infrared converted camera, you can hang about. It's gone 9 o'clock in the morning. The sun and the light here is terrible, but it's perfect for infrared. So the composition is something like this. It's slightly wider on my other camera, but you get the idea. It's going to be a symmetrical shot. Pond in the foreground. There'll be water in the foreground, not lit up by the sun, but I might be able to lift the exposure afterwards. And then you've got the pavilion in the middle and then sky behind you. Oh, John's come in the background to disturb. He's definitely going to distract me. This guy John here was in my last infrared video. Okay, so what we're looking at on the back of the camera, I'll show you this when I'm back in front of the Lightroom, but that's a correctly exposed photograph. And if I hit the display button, you can see that's all in the histogram. And what you may not be able to see on this camera, filming the back of the camera, is that the sky does have a hint of colour. And if you've got some colour in the sky, that means you can manipulate it in Photoshop later, which I'll run through. So just in case my other location there by the pond is a bit too noisy and the foreground's a bit too dark, I'm looking in the bushes now. But there's another composition just across here which I'll show you in a second, and this might be the image that I process. Let's have a look at them in Lightroom and see what happens. So this is what the scene looks like in visible light. Now I've got one more composition. This is horrendously overexposed, but you get the idea. This is the other composition. Okay, I think I'm done here, so we're going to head back to the computer and I'll show you the editing process from that point onwards. Let's go. Okay, I choose to use Lightroom and Photoshop and a few extra plugins. You could probably do this on multiple photo editing software. You're also going to need a coffee. But I'll keep this short and sweet. I'm sure there are loads of different ways of getting to the same end goal. But if you guys have got any great ideas, put them in the comments below and we'll all get there much quicker if we just share each other's knowledge. There doesn't seem to be that much information out on the internet regarding infrared post-processing, so if you want to work with RAW files, the first barrier you're going to come up against in Lightroom is you're going to have to create a custom camera profile and install that into Lightroom so that when you import RAW files, it maintains the original white balance that you saw on the back of your camera. So in the develop module, if you scroll down to the bottom, you hit camera calibration, you'll see here that I've got an installed unique camera profile. If you don't have this custom camera profile, Lightroom's default white balance is limited to 2000 Kelvin. But what you do is once you've installed this, you can activate your custom white balance picture profile, and now you've got an expanded white balance range.
look, the white balance goes from 2000 all the way up to 50,000. So what happens now, whenever I put a memory card in which has got files in it from my Canon 550D, Adobe Lightroom applies this custom camera profile and corrects the white balance. You only have to do this once. I'm going to put a link in the description that will talk you through that entire process, because otherwise this video will just become too long. Now, although I prefer this as a photograph, this doesn't have trees. Well, it doesn't have as many trees as the other photographs. So I'm going to, for the purposes of this experiment, I'm going to edit this image because it contains trees, and that will benefit the false color edit that I'm going to do. First editing style, simple, black and white. Let's jump into it. As I was saying in the first part of this video, my original infrared video, infrared has got a pretty extensive dynamic range. You can see here I've still got a bit of headroom before the highlights are clipping. So what I typically do is I get my black and white points sorted. So if you hold down shift and click on whites, that will instantly get you to your white point. I'll bring that back a smidge so that it's not too punchy. Already got some blacks. And then what I would do is edit the photograph in Silver Efex Pro, and you can see I've got all the default presets here. I might go for something, I mean, low key looks pretty good, but I want some drama in the sky, so I might deselect the building, something like that. Without going into too much detail, it looks quite a really straightforward one. Just would be to start off with the neutral, and then I do love adding a vignette. But anyway, this is infrared. You can go crazy with the edits. It's not supposed to be realistic. Might bring this down a smidge. Take the vignette down to 2. For a black and white edit, I'd say I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously, I'm an architectural photographer and this building is leaning, so I would lose sleep over this. But that's got nothing to do with the colour editing of this infrared photograph. So I'll bring that back into Lightroom and we are done. For the black and white edit, unless I was cloning out, say, these aeroplane trails and things like that, I would just do the black and white edit entirely in Lightroom and using Silver Efex. The second type of image we're going to edit today is more traditionally known as a channel swap, because you've got an orangey looking sky and we're used to blue sky. So we're just going to flip the colours so you get a blue sky and a warm foreground. So for the second image, I might jump onto another infrared raw file, and the reason being is because this building, the Royal Pavilion, has taken on the same colour as the sky in this instance. So I'm not going to be able to separate the building from the sky when I do the edit. But I'll show you how I'd edit this, and perhaps we'll try on another image as well. The only things I've changed so far, I've changed the white and the black points. If you come down to the HSL tabs, you can click on this and increase the saturation of the oranges. There you go, bit more punchy. Then bring that over to Photoshop, and this is how I prefer to do the channel swap. So if you go into a levels adjustment layer, you take the shadows and you're essentially swapping these two icons, which switches your shadows and your highlights. So you bring your highlights all the way down and you push your shadows all the way to the top, and then under blending mode you change that to hue, and what that does is it makes the sky blue and the foliage a very subtle orangey colour. Let's try that on a different image. I think this image is going to be better for this particular example. So here is a windmill that I photographed in Norfolk. Different lens but same camera, very similar settings. So the only tweak I'm going to make is I'm going to go into the HSL tab. I'm going to boost the saturation of the oranges. That's it. Okay, now if we bring that across into Photoshop, you go into Levels Adjustment. You take the black point and the white point and you flip them over so it becomes an inverted photograph, and then you go to the blending mode and you change that to hue, and you instantly end up with a blue sky and a lovely orangey amber tone to the foliage. In my opinion, this is much better colour rendition than when you do the channel swap. You can set up actions in Photoshop so that you could just click one button and it would do the channel swap, but in my opinion, I just prefer the blues with this. They were coming out a bit too green when I was doing them before with the channel swap. And from here I'll probably just do a few final tweaks in Color Efex Pro. Then in Color Effects Pro, I'll probably just drag some Pro Contrast onto that. I do like dynamic contrast, and as you can see, the before and after really punches the blue sky, the reflections, and the orange in the foliage. Look at that, perfect.
And the third type of photo editing style that we're going to do today is false color. The reason it's called false color is that genuine infrared doesn't have color, it's just an energy wave. What you're seeing here in the 720 nanometer, the color is coming from the visible spectrum. So a 720 nanometer conversion lets through some visible light, the color, and then the rest of it is infrared. But a genuine infrared photograph, which is higher up on the spectrum, doesn't have color. False color is quite playful, actually. It's a bit in your face, but you can edit images in false color pretty hard and get away with it. So let's jump into it.
Back to the raw file. This was exactly as photographed. Now, if you want to do some false color, some quite fun colors in the foliage, what you're going to have to do is, instead of taking your white balance and setting it onto the foliage, you're going to turn that to the orange, because we want the orange to go away and we want the color to be on the trees. So white balance picker, hit the clouds. Now what you'll find is most of the foreground and the sky is almost black and white, and the color is now sitting in the trees. What we really need to do is get the color to really pop here in Lightroom. So you're going to up the clarity, loads of vibrance and loads of saturation. It's going to look horrible right now. Bring that across into Photoshop. Once you've opened the image in Photoshop, you're just looking to add an adjustment layer with the hue and saturation, and I tend to just leave it on master, and then you're just tweaking. I mean, this isn't tweaking, this is extreme. You can just have some fun. This is totally subjective. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. Once you think, oh, actually I quite like the pink and the green, you can up the saturation, or you could start to play about with different layers and changing the greens or concentrating on the different colors themselves. That's how you create false color infrared photographs. Let's try this on the Royal Pavilion image and see how that looks. Select our white balance based upon the sky. You can see the trees have got a bit more punchy with the blues, so we're going to up the clarity, go crazy on that. Yes, look at that. Then we're going to bring that across into Photoshop. Hue and adjustments. Oh yeah, look at that. Were you ready for pink trees today? Oh, that's nice. Look at that. Okay, I can handle that, but I can't handle the green and the pink on the building, so we're going to fix that. There you go, I'm a bit more happy with that. So what I've done is I've just created another layer, which is black and white, and then I've subtly brought in, using a layer mask, some of the black and white to bring it down. But it's still got some colour in it, but I've just toned it down a bit so that you're not just drawn to the building. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
So there you go. Nice and straightforward. 3 different styles of editing your infrared photographs. Any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more images of my infrared work, go to benharveyphotography.co.uk and click on infrared. There's some examples of my images from the last 8 years, maybe. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.